Hello and welcome to today's live. The question I'm going to answer for today is how to influence someone in an argument. How to influence someone in an argument without ruining the relationship. In the future, you're going to find yourself in a situation where inevitably you are two people with two different positions. You have two different opinions about something, and you want to come to an agreement with that person without ruining the relationship, without getting into a spat or a quarrel. Now, the relationship could be your romantic relationship, someone who you consider as your partner. You have two different positions and you want to come to an agreement or an understanding. Or it could be your beloved friend, a good friend, or a family member. Or you find yourself in an argument with either a client or a customer or a colleague. How do you argue with that person so you become simultaneously influential and keeping the relationship in a good standing? You will find yourself in a situation like that in the future, and I'm going to give you a technique that's very, very persuasive and very, very seductive and influential. And I'll give you a technique for you to use so that you can become very, very persuasive and effective when it comes to being in an argument. And a technique, it's a 3-step technique that you can use starting today. But first, I'm going to lay out the ground philosophies that you have to have before you can use that technique. Without having this philosophy, this technique isn't going to be as powerful and as effective as it could be. Think about the metaphor. If I gave you this technique, it's like throwing a pin at somebody, a clothing pin. And when you throw a pin at somebody, they're gonna feel like a little thing, but they're not gonna be affected by it at all. They're gonna be like, a little tickle. But if you put a rod behind that pin, you could pierce that pin into someone's heart. And so that's why I'm gonna give you the philosophy so that you can drive the technique into somebody's heart. And you'll find yourself in these situations where you have two different positions. Now, what kind of situations will you find yourself in? What do I mean? Well, of course, you'll find yourself in a situation where you have two different positions with your partner, with your live-in partner, with your beloved, your best friend, your friends, someone you want to keep a good relationship with, someone you don't want to just burn the bridges and destroy that relationship, whether it's a family member or whether it's a client or customer, right? People like to burn bridges and say, who cares about that relationship? I don't want to have to deal with that. But you can actually, rather than have that, keep the relationship intact and have a more productive and effective communication. And that's what I'm going to teach you today. Now, this also applies especially in a professional relationship. Do you understand that when you have someone who comes into your business and you provide a product or a service, that person at that moment, before they buy the product, they have a different position from you, because your position is, this customer, you should buy this product. Client, you should buy this service. You should pay for this service. And the customer and client doesn't have that same opinion yet. So you have two different opinions. You have two different opinions about something. And you want to come to a place where you align with your opinions. So when they buy the product, you now are aligned. You wanted them to buy the product. Your belief was, you should buy this product. You should buy this service. And they bought the service. So this is also something you can use in that situation. So you can become very, very seductive and powerful and effective and influential and persuasive with what I'm going to teach you. Of course, we have an online course called Great Relationships University. And it's called that because every skill, the most important skills you'll develop in life, is your skill to influence, to communicate and develop and manage relationships with other people. Not only necessarily your beloved, your partner, your romantic partner, but also people that are your friends, your colleagues, clients, and customers. How do you develop relationships with those people, whether romantically or non-romantically? So now let's go over, before I teach you the technique, the 3-step technique, the 2 philosophical foundations that you should have so you can become very powerful, very effective, very persuasive. Number 1 is the goal of communication. The goal of communication is appreciation. Someone asked me last week, we talked about this last week, someone asked me last week, the goal of communication is not appreciation. Someone doesn't need to be thankful or have gratitude towards you, but here's the thing. Appreciation doesn't necessarily mean gratitude or being thankful. Appreciation is to understand the full worth and the full value of something. Let me say that again. To appreciate something is to know the full worth and value of something. Nothing to do with gratitude. Nothing to do with being thankful. To understand something is to appreciate something. So in other words, to communicate, the goal of communication is understanding, to understand the other person. And just simply understanding this philosophy will get you in a good place with that person, because the thing most people crave that they never get is appreciation. The thing most people crave and they seldom get, is appreciation. And they love more and more and more. When you communicate to them what they appreciate about themselves, you will create a bond with them that no one ever has. Let me say that again. This is really something powerful, something very something very seductive. People crave appreciation. If you can provide for them, if you can communicate to them, appreciate in them what they appreciate about themselves, well, they will pretty much do anything for you, because they never get it from anyone else. That's golden tip number 1. So the goal of communication is appreciation. When you can communicate, I'll show you how this technique, when I tell you the technique, I'll show you how it works and why it does this automatically. When someone feels appreciated and understood, oftentimes that's all they need. Oftentimes they will do whatever you say. They will buy into your philosophy. They will buy into your vision just when you can communicate that you understand them, that they are understood. So I want you to really catch that. I want you to really catch this, because it's very powerful. In fact, you can apply this into everything. You can apply this into customers, clients, sales, romantic relationships. When the other person feels understood, oftentimes that's all they need, and they will buy into whatever you're going to tell them next. When they feel understood, when they feel empathy. So I'll give you another for example. When you can communicate to a customer or a client that you understand their position, in their minds, here's what happens. In their minds, they say, wow, this person really gets me. This person really understands me. And I'll show you how the technique does it, how you could do it with the technique. But here's what happens in their mind when you can communicate appreciation. Wow, this person really understands me. Anything they say next must be valid. Let me say that again. If you can get the person to say, wow, this girl, this guy really does understand where I'm coming from, anything you say after that becomes valid for them, until they get to the point where they feel you understand them. They can't get that. They can't get to that point. They can't say anything this person says is valid. But when they say, this person really understands me, whatever they say next must align with that, because they understand me. They already understand me. This is very hypnotic, very persuasive, very seductive. Because anything you say after that, well, they understand me. Therefore, anything they say after that, I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to see if I could understand them. I'm going to see if their position, I'm going to actually open my ears to their position. I'm going to actually listen to their position. Very powerful. Number 2 is that in an argument, now an argument doesn't necessarily mean a quarrel or a fight. It's just 2 different positions. And here's why you want to build a strong case for your argument. If you don't build a strong case, you don't really know what you're talking about. and you shouldn't communicate in a way which you know the position. You should just say, this is my opinion, or this is what I think until further information, until I gather more information. But up until now, here's all I know. Until you can have a strong case for it. You can't communicate with certainty. And you shouldn't communicate with certainty. That would be called deception or lying. And so in an argument, every single one of us have something called the ego. The ego's sole purpose is one thing. I want you to pay attention to this because this applies in every communication you have in your life. The ego's purpose is one thing, and that is to not be diminished. And here's something you may have never heard before. What is the ego? The ego is an avatar of who you imagine other people view you. Let me say that in different words. Your ego is an avatar, is a representation in your mind. It's a function in your mind. It's a representation, it's an avatar of how you imagine you are as others view you. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with how you imagine other people view you, how you imagine yourself in the eyes of others. Why? Why is that the case? Because when we didn't know language, when we couldn't make representations, we couldn't form an ego. Until we learned language, we developed ego. Why is that? It's because language are abstractions themselves. Language is an abstraction. A word is an abstraction. It's a representation of reality. I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine I'm holding an orange. Now, am I actually holding an orange? No, you don't see an orange in my hand. I told you I'm holding an orange, therefore in your mind I'm holding an orange, because the word orange is a representation of reality. Orange, the word, O-R-A-N-G-E combination in the English language, is an avatar, a representation of the fruit orange or the color orange, and simultaneously the color of the fruit is orange and it's also the fruit. So language creates representations. Now, the ego is a representation of us, and it can only be a representation of us in the eyes of others. And here's why. It's because you didn't learn ego until you learned language. Before you learned language, this was just something to control things. When you learn language, this is not only an arm, not only a hand, this is my hand. Now, you go deeper into that, and the authority figures that were teaching you language, they were telling you identity statements. They were saying, you are this, you are that, you are a good boy, you are a good girl. Hey, that was very good. No, that was very bad. Don't do that again. Bad boy, bad girl, good boy, good girl. Now you know, oh, okay, I'm a good boy, I'm a good girl. You're a great artist. Oh, I'm a great artist. You're a terrifying, terrible artist. Oh, I must not be a good artist. The authority figure said, I'm not a good artist. Now you're developing something called an avatar of you, which can only come from the eyes of other people, because that's how you communicate with other people, with words. And so you develop something called an identity. You develop something called an ego. Now, I go deep into that, a 2-hour conversation, 2-hour training on the Great Relationships University. I think, it was unit number 1, Mindset Mastery. Check that out in the Great Relationships University. Now, everybody has an ego. Therefore, the ego's job is to not be diminished. So anything that diminishes the ego, anything that diminishes what their preconceptions of themselves are, they will fight against. I want to say that again. Anything that goes against what they preconceive, what they already know to be true in their minds, which has nothing to do with reality, just what they know to be true in their minds, they will fight against. And so what you have to do in an argument is you have to circumvent the ego, and provided new information. Provided new information. When you're in an argument, if you clash against what the person's preconceptions are without any new information, it's not going to be a very effective argument, and they're not going to change their position. In fact, what they're going to do is they're going to strengthen their position even more, because the only way they can argue is to find out, really pull from themselves more and more to protect that preconception. That's the only way they can argue. So how do you circumvent the ego? Circumvent the ego by providing the ego what the ego needs. The ego needs new information. The ego needs new perspective. When you provide the ego new information, new perspective, and you premise, the premise of the communication is understanding, and the technique will give you that. This technique I'm going to show you. You're going to be able to not only be in good standing with that person, and have your relationship intact, in fact, have a better relationship, but you will now provide that information, that ego, new information, so that they can change their mind on their own time. Remember how we talked about last week how there are 3 kinds of people who you'll argue with? Some people will get it right away without explanation. Some get it with explanation. You have to provide a good case. And some people will never get it with or without explanation, and that has to be okay with you. Some people will get it later on, and that's okay. You cannot rely on the outcome. You cannot take responsibility over their authority. Whether they get it or not, it's not up to you, it's not up to them. But you can do the best to influence them, to persuade them as much as you'd like. That's the best you can do. You can never take responsibility over their authority. So you got that now. What is a technique? A technique is something I learned way back on influence and persuasion, especially when I was building an organization, when my goal was to influence others to buy into a vision, a leadership, a product, and a service. Getting a text. All right, so the technique is called feel, felt, found. Feel, felt, found. And this has built into it the idea of the 2 philosophies, which the goal of communication is appreciation, and to circumvent the ego. Feel, felt, found. Next time you find yourself in an argument, you'll think about feel, felt, found. Feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. Here, I felt the same way, and here's what I found out. I understand how you feel. I felt the same way. Here's what I found out. It doesn't mean go say that. It doesn't mean go say, hey, I understand how you feel. Here's what I felt. I felt the same way. Here's what I found out. If you want to be very simple, if you want to be very simplistic, you could say that, I suppose, but it's not very effective. The effectiveness of that is to delineate, communicate. You communicate that you understand how they feel, and then you communicate that you felt the same way, and you communicate that here's what you found out. You provide a strong case. So the number 2 philosophy has to do with you're knowing what you're talking about, and you're being able to build a strong case so that you can provide that person's ego new information so that they can buy into your position. They can go onto your side if that's something you'd like. Feel, felt, found is feel. I understand how you feel, which is what? Empathy. I understand how you feel is empathy. What is empathy? What is sympathy? Sympathy is feeling for the person. Empathy is understanding how the person feels and being able to communicate it. Let me say that again. Empathy is understanding how the other person feels and being able to communicate that. That's a different approach to empathy, but it's a very, very accurate one. When you can communicate let me listen to this. When you can communicate to the other person how they feel, they will come to a conclusion that you understand them, and they will listen to anything you say after that. Did you catch how powerful that was? Do you see what I'm saying? If you can communicate empathy, if you can communicate to them using words how they feel, I understand how you feel, they will buy into your position. Okay, There's something in the Great Relationships University. There's in the unit 5, social dynamics. I talked about careening conversations, and careening conversations is something we use in any communication with people. And one of the things that we use careening conversations for is essentially just controlling conversations, is handling objections. In sales, there's something called handling objections. And this is something that you can use in any communication, not just sales. Handling objections is, do you know the number one technique in handling objections? Is to always agree with the client, always agree with the customer. Why? Why is that? It's because when you can communicate, hey, I understand how you feel. Hey, I understand you're just here so you ask somebody, everybody goes into your shop and you ask them, hey, how can I help you? And they say, I'm okay. I'm just looking. Now, that person is there for a very particular reason. There's a very particular reason they're there. They're not just looking. More often than not, 99% of the time, they're not just looking. They're there because for a very specific purpose. But the automatic response is, oh, no, I'm okay. I'm just looking. And so you want to, do you want to become an effective salesperson? Use this as an objection. Always agree with the customer. Always agree with the client. Say, I understand you're just looking. And this is a great place. This is a fantastic place. We have a bunch of different selections. So what exactly were you looking for? Do you see what I did there? I said I understood that they're just looking. And this is a fantastic place for them to look. And then I provided them with a different cue to careen, to control their mind. Mind control. To control the conversation. Now, are you looking for a smaller car or a bigger car than what you're driving right now? Now, were you looking for a therapy massage or a relaxing massage? What information can I get you on? Oh, no, I'm just looking. Oh, okay, yeah, I understand you're just looking. Most people are just, it's a great place to look because there's a lot of things. So we have a big option of things here. No, what exactly were you looking for? Were you looking for something bigger or smaller than what you're driving right now? Careening conversations. Understand how the person feels. Now, I understand you. How does that look like? It could look like this. I understand that blank. I understand that you feel this way. Now, you don't want to say this just to be offensive. You don't want to say this, I understand you're sad and you're lonely. No, I understand. Really dig deep into their position, really dig deep into how they feel. And the goal of this, number one, is to get them to feel that, hey, this person understands me. That's the goal. And if you can just cover that part, if you can just take care of that part, your relationship will be amazing. Because in an argument, who cares if they buy into your position? Who cares? Why do you care so much? Why do you care so much if they buy into your position? People are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to believe what they're going to believe. The best you can do, and the only responsibility you should ever have, is to present your case and leave it at that. Some people will get it without explanation. Some people get it with explanation. Some people will never get it. And you have to be okay with that. Who cares what their position is? Just be in a position where you can influence them the most. So you can have a better life. You can have a better environment around you. It's nothing better with people that you feel good about being around you, right? Number 2 is, here's how I felt. I felt the same way. Now you're just telling them a story. Now you're building commonality with them. You're starting from common ground. This is a fundamental in relationships. In the 6th unit in the Great Relationships University, the very last course, if you look at how to develop families and the 21 laws of leadership, building families and 21 laws of leadership, one of the laws is developing common ground. It's a really beautiful thing. Develop common ground. Now, who am I to teach you how to argue? I didn't know how to speak any English when I came to the US when I was 10 years old. I didn't know how to speak English. I didn't know how to argue. I was a bad communicator. I couldn't have good relationships. And so when I found myself in an argument, man, I just froze up. I would swallow my own voice, and whenever I spoke, I couldn't speak. So I just became very emotional, very angry. When you can't communicate, the only thing you can do is be angry because you want to control the situation. And the only way to control the situation is your defense mechanisms. Some people's defense mechanisms is to run away. Some people's defense mechanism was to get angry, get emotional, cry. Because they want to control the conversation. They use to the best of their knowledge, what they can to control the situation. When you can't control it using skills, using words, you control it other ways, such as emotion, crying, being depressed. The more skill you have, the more understanding, the more enlightenment you have about life, about communication, the better off you are. And so you build common ground. Look, I didn't know how to argue either. But here's what happened to me. Here's what I learned. I drew a line in the sand and I said, I'm not going to have bad relationships anymore. I'm going to learn how to handle this. And I discovered something called books. I discovered something called coaching. And I spent tens of thousands of dollars to be around people who are very good at what they do, very good at communicating, very good at persuading and influencing. And I became part of those groups. And over the next 10 years, that's all I studied. It's all I focused on. I became fanatic about learning how to communicate with people. And here's what I found out about arguing. And now I'm developing a position. So build common ground. Here's what I understand how you feel. Here's what I felt. Let's say it's a customer. So the customer comes in and say, I'm just looking. I understand you're just looking and it's a great place to look. And I really appreciate it because we're one of the best places to look in this city. Now, what exactly were you looking for? So I could point you out. So let's say they're looking for a sports car. And I said, oh, okay. Oh, nice. What kind of sports car? I used to be really into sports myself. And I did it for a lot of my life. I drag raced. And here's what I found out. And they say, oh, okay, I'm looking for a Japanese import. Oh, I love Japanese imports. So build common ground. And then now, what's the next step? Feel, felt, what? Found. Here's what I found out. Now you provide them with a strong case. Now you provide them with new information. Now what's the goal of this? To circumvent the ego. The first one is to build empathy. Feel, felt is to build common ground so they can build empathy towards you. You're orchestrating something. You're orchestrating this. You understand them, and then you're orchestrating with felt to get them to understand you. And then you're all orchestrating found so that you can get their ego, circumvent their ego, get the ego to listen to new information. The ego says, hey, this person understands me. Now I can be open and listen to what they have to say. Feel, felt, found. I hope you got some value out of that. Stay tuned next Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Standard Time. We're going to answer any of your questions. And if you want to know more about how to become persuasive and influential, go see a Great Relationships University ambassador. And they probably likely shared this video. Go see their link and check out the Great Relationships University online course, which is 6 courses over 12 hours for right now. It's probably going to be more by the time you watch this. 12 plus hours of training on how to become persuasive, on mindset, on getting over the ego. There's things you can do with the ego so you can control your ego, how to become more in control of your life, how you can become more in control of your communication, and how you can manage relationships with your friends, your colleagues, your clients, your customers, your marketing, your social media, and more especially importantly, your beloved. How you can facilitate a fantastic relationship for everybody. The skills you need to have more control over your life. See a Great Relationships University ambassador. If you don't know anybody, then you just contact me. I'll be able to help you. And I hope to talk to you soon. Leave a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, I would love to hear them. And I appreciate you tuning in. And I'll see you on the next live. Bye-bye.